Now, as you may know, both the UK and France have called snap elections, with Britain heading to the polls on July the 4th and France a little earlier on June the 30th. In the UK, a leading British think tank, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, is accusing both the opposition Labour Party and the governing Conservatives of engaging in a conspiracy of silence over possible tax rises. The warning comes as the UK prepares to vote in a pivotal general election on the 4th of July. Meanwhile, French voters go to the polls on Sunday in the first round of snap elections to the National Assembly, which President Emmanuel Macron dissolved in a surprise move earlier this month. Right-wing leader Marine Le Pen's National Rally continues to gain support at the expense of Mr. Macron's centrist bloc. Arise Special correspondent John Cookson reports now from Westminster.
Good evening from Westminster here in the UK, where British people in 9 days' time go to the polls to elect a new government. And if the opinion polls are correct, Rishi Sunak's Conservative government is set to be ousted in a massive way. The polling is showing right today, if the election was today, Labour on 42%, the Conservatives on 20%. They've been consistently 20% behind for the last few weeks. Nigel Farage's Reform Party on 17%, the Lib Dems on 11% and the Greens on 6%. A seismic change is about to take place on the political scene here in the UK in the coming days. We've not seen anything like it for at least a generation. This is as big as Winston Churchill being ousted in 1945, Maggie Thatcher being swept to power in 1979 and Tony Blair getting a landslide win in 1997. You have to go all the way back to 1906 to see such a crushing defeat for the Conservative Party. And there are questions tonight as to whether, in fact, the Conservative Party, which has been in existence for 200 years or so, will actually survive the crash. We'll have to wait and see. So how do we get to this point? Well, the rot set in as long ago as 2010, when the Conservatives and the Lib Dems formed a coalition government following the world economic crash in 2008-2009 and introduced strong economic measures which depressed the economy. They said to take these steps to stop the economy crashing. Fast forward 10 years to COVID, when the government had to bail out to the tune of £500 billion British companies and British people. Then, of course, came the Ukraine war, which had an impact on electricity and gas prices, and it ended up with the British people being taxed to the highest rate since the end of the Second World War. But that wasn't the whole story. The Conservative Party nowadays is seen as stale. It's been in power for 14 years. There's something rotten at the core, and they point to the disastrous premiership of Theresa May, her 49 days in office, which crashed the economy and sent mortgages through the roof. And then we had the Boris Johnson years and his messing about, if you like, partying during the COVID crisis. All this led to a deep mistrust of the Conservative Party by the British people. So, as I say, Rishi Sunak set to be thrown out of number 10 when polling, the results are known on July the 5th. As for Keir Starmer's Labour Party, they're promising no new taxes, certainly no new income tax, corporation tax, VAT, which is a sales tax. However, they are silent on whether they're prepared to put up council tax. Council tax is something which is averages at about £2,000 a year for the average British family. It goes to repairing the roads, for example. And also they could increase capital gains tax, which is, for example, a tax on the sale of your second home. As far as rich Nigerians are concerned, they may well be interested in this election, because the Labour Party is pledging to get rid of non-dom status for tax purposes. So, for example, if you were a rich Nigerian businessman or woman living in the UK, and you are resident here but not domiciled for tax purposes, then you don't pay tax on earnings from your company in the UK, as long as those earnings stay offshore in Nigeria. So that's something to look out for example, rich Nigerians, or indeed all the rich people, rich foreigners who live and work here in the UK. While the British election plods along, things are far more febrile and dynamic across the Channel in France, where earlier this month President Macron dissolved the National Assembly to everyone's surprise. It came after a drubbing for his Renaissance party by Marine Le Pen's RN right-wing party in the European elections. No one's quite sure why Macron took this extraordinary step. French presidents have done it in the past. De Gaulle dissolved the parliament in 1962, 1968, Jacques Chirac in 1995. It occasionally happens, but it's very, very rare. Some observers believe that Macron was trying to push things forward so that the leftist parties would fall into disarray, and therefore the threat to him and his party politically would go away. But the exact opposite has happened. They've formed into a single group, a leftist bloc, the PDF, and at the same time support is flowing in to Marine Le Pen's party. A third of women who voted in the European elections in France voted for Marine Le Pen, which is quite an extraordinary thing to happen. Now the French go to the polls next Sunday, and again the Sunday after. Elections, National Assembly elections are quite complicated in France. There's a first round where a candidate has to get 50% of the vote from 25% of the electorate. If he or she doesn't, then it goes to a second round, and no one's quite sure what the outcome is, although pollsters are predicting that the RN party, the national, formerly National Front Party, is going to win a majority in the French Parliament, although that's by far uncertain at the moment. If that happens and there is a prime minister from that party, this will be a seismic shift in France, and will impact hugely on Europe and indeed the rest of the world. France is a permanent member of the Security Council, a member of NATO, the most powerful force in France at the moment. So for France to shift in this way to the right and indeed have Marine Le Pen as president in 3 years' time will be quite extraordinary. That's it from London. Back to you guys in the studio.
John, thanks very much indeed. John Cookson, a Rise Special correspondent, talking to me there from Westminster in central London.